Hello? I was in the area looking for a TARDIS and happened to spot this compound. It's been a ride, Daleks, Godzilla. Thought I'd, super casually stop by and say hi. Anybody home? Hello? This is the Venture compound, right? I just gotta say, big fan. Assuming anyone's here and I'm not just talking to myself, but since I've already made myself at home, it seems like a perfect time to talk about the Venture Brothers. So let me just set something up really quick since it doesn't look like we've got power. Alright, got a generator running. Hopefully I didn't miss a step there.
Falling apart over here. A helper can't get any juice, and the fridge is just getting water all over the floor, and it smells like bad milk.
Yeah, anyway, does this intro make sense? Not really, but it kind of tracks for the Venture Brothers universe, doesn't it? It's a show where the impossible feels strangely possible, and I love that about it. And it really genuinely sucks there's no new Venture Brothers content. This series was canceled a while ago now, but I wanted to take this chance to talk about it as a whole. It is my birthday month, and what better way to celebrate than diving into a series that's meant so much to me. Now, just to set expectations, this isn't a retrospective or a review. That is coming the Friday after next. Today's video is a bit more personal. It's a walkthrough of my journey with the Venture Brothers and how it became a cornerstone of my adult film experience for 2 decades. I'll also explore some questions that helped me understand the series a little more holistically. It's an exercise I found very fulfilling, especially when it comes to some of my favorite series or franchises. So please feel welcome to respond to any of my responses in the comments, as well as respond to the questions yourselves. They are very clearly laid out in the video description.
Fine. There's only one way to end this then, isn't there? Done! $1 million. There!
First, if you have not heard of the series, get ready for a show that blends dark humor, wild adventure, and a whole lot of sharp satire.
I remember that. That was when we both grew the...
Let me formally introduce you to The Venture Brothers, an animated series that takes everything you thought you knew about superhero stories and Saturday morning cartoons and just flips it on its head. At its core, the Venture Brothers follows the Venture family. Honorary Dr. Rusty Venture, washed up isn't quite the word since he peaked before he was out of high school, but all he got was a couple of half-baked versions with daddy issues in his 2 sons, Hank and Dean,
We don't have a mom, Hank.
who somehow always find themselves caught up in bizarre and dangerous situations. The family is rounded off with their bodyguard, Brock, for the majority of the series, voiced by the one and only Patrick Warburton. Plus a revolving cast of side characters, the ones we see most often being Billy Quizboy and Pete White. On the opposite end of the super spectrum in the world of the Venture Brothers, we give equal attention to the Monarch, the best damn butterfly supervillain you've ever seen. His girlfriend, actually a doctor, misses the girlfriend, and his almost entirely dispensable army of henchmen, with the exception there being Henchmen 21 and 24.
Oh, my stanza!
In a world full of super scientists, costume villains, and shady organizations, nothing is ever what it seems. The show is set in a universe that's part retro sci-fi, part comic book, and part action-adventure cartoon. Think Johnny Quest. Wait, do people know what Johnny Quest is still? Oh god. But way darker and more twisted.
Good morning, cartoon indoor space enthusiasts. Welcome to the Astrobase Go Moon Tour. This is your captain speaking. I would like to welcome you to the most dangerously legally operated tour bus, the Astro Shuttle 3. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Fire!
So where do we even start? Well, let's begin with this. How were you introduced to the Venture Brothers? It's a series that pulls you in with its humor, keeps you hooked with its world building, and surprises you with its emotional depth. But unlike many fans, my introduction wasn't exactly conventional. I was out in the woods searching for the things that should not be named, but when I got close they distracted me with my one true weakness: DVDs. In all seriousness, my first encounter was catching some random episode late at night on Adult Swim. So, like a lot of kids who grew up on the early days of Cartoon Network, I was steeped in classic cartoons and comic books. The Venture Brothers felt like a bizarre but brilliant commentary on all of it, dissecting and subverting those tropes I'd absorbed without even realizing it.
Sunny! Groovy! Wake up!
Now, I don't remember exactly how old I was, definitely too young according to the network guidelines, but honestly, that's probably half the target audience for Adult Swim. Kids staying up way past their bedtime. I didn't fully grasp what the show was doing at the time, but even then I was fascinated. There was something about the way Doc Hammer and Jackson Public created these larger-than-life, fantastical characters and somehow made them feel incredibly real.
Gotta try this. It feels too good.
From that moment on, whenever I could muster the willpower to stay awake, which wasn't often, honestly, I'd tune in for more Venture Brothers because I have to admit I was terrible at keeping up with new episodes and announcements. So for years, I watched the show completely out of order, catching random episodes and piecing them together as I went. It wasn't until the series had its soft relaunch in 2015 that I finally went back and watched everything in sequence. That's when the full brilliance of the show hit me, and I realized just how layered and deliberate it all was.
As our beautiful and forgiving stewardesses clean up your vomit, I'd like to take this time to tell you a little about Astrobase Go. History tells us that in 1976, self-made bazillionaire and acquitted pederast Dr. Daniel Faustus founded the Special Boys Society, a fellowship whose alumni even to this day include senators, statesmen, and beloved professional athletes.
Alright, and let's shift gears just a little bit. One of the most intriguing questions of the series is this: what does it mean to be a hero in the Venture Brothers universe? In the strictest sense, being a hero in this world is a licensed profession. It's not just about saving the day, it's a job, complete with bureaucracy, rules, and a paycheck. The OSI treats heroism like a structured career, and the Guild of Calamitous Intent operates with its own set of regulations for villains. But then you've also got vigilantes like the Blue Morpho who prove that off-the-books heroism is just as real and just as messy. And here's where it gets interesting. In this universe, being a hero isn't just about fighting the bad guys. In a world where being a hero is a job, the biggest heroes are the ones winning at capitalism. Take Rusty Venture, one of the series' driving forces, for example. His obsession isn't with making groundbreaking discoveries, it's with keeping up with the legacy of his father, Jonas Venture Sr. For Rusty, success means maintaining the illusion of prominence and wealth, even if he has to cut corners to get there, and he cuts a lot of corners.
Explain to the untalented Mr. Ripley here. He can't just waltz into my dimension and try to kill me with a rock and replace me.
Fast forward to the series relaunch in Season 6, and the same dynamics play out. Rusty is still struggling to measure up, now competing with his turmeric brother, Jonas Venture Jr., who's built a revamped version of Venture Industries. It's not about who's the smartest or the bravest, it's about who can claim the biggest slice of that pie. What's fascinating is that the lines between good and evil blur constantly. The Guild's members are often shown to be more empathetic and relatable than their so-called heroic counterparts, but exploring that theme is a whole other question, one we'll dive into just a little bit later.
In 1982, that same Dr. Daniel Faustus approached NASA with a startling solution to the now-abandoned space race: build a moon-orbiting classroom manned entirely by young boys. Cared for by an assemblage of nurturing robots, or soulbots, these cadets would grow up with a strong respect for the new frontier of space.
So let's keep moving, shall we? What's next? Oh, right, your favorite episodes. So I practically had written down an entire page answering this question, then I realized a lot of what I was writing is pretty much exactly what I had written down for my short and sweet video in 2 weeks when I go over every episode. So just going to be cutting this question. If you really wanted to know my favorite episodes, I'm guessing you'd probably just want my view on all the episodes, which is exactly what short and sweet marathons are. So, yeah, do that, or just watch that video to support the channel like cool people do.
NASA wisely labeled the doctor a dangerous crackpot and denied his request. Undaunted and rich, the good doctor secretly went ahead with his wondrous plans. In 1985, Astro Base Go, along with Astro Base BMX Dinosaur and Astro Base Ice Cream Ninja, all of which were named by his special boys, were quietly launched into the less judgmental arms of outer space.
Alright, so we've talked about what it means to be a hero in the Venture Brothers universe, but that leads us naturally to a bigger question. The one that I was just talking about. What are the themes of the show? Because if there's one thing the Venture Brothers excels at, it's weaving ridiculously rich themes into its absurd, over-the-top world. The show is thematically dense, largely because of its premise. What happens when real, flawed people inhabit a world straight out of Saturday morning cartoons? One of the most compelling themes, beautifully dissected in Stake Bentley's fantastic YouTube video, is failure. The show revels in exploring what it means to fail and how characters grapple with their shortcomings. Beyond that, the Venture Brothers digs into themes of growing up, clinging to childhood, and the burdens of legacy. And one of its greatest strengths is the willingness to contrast opposite sides, exploring their complexities. Think of all of the magic versus science episodes sprinkled throughout the series. Neither side is ever purely right or wrong. But if we are talking themes, the one I want to zero in on is the idea that no one is purely good or purely evil. This is a concept Doc Hammer and Jackson Public explicitly identified as one of the core's theses. Theses? I think theses. And you can see it in every layer of the series. Take Jonas Venture Sr. He's the perfect example. To the public, Jonas is a larger-than-life hero, a beacon of genius and virtue. Even our in-universe Mr. Fantastic looks up to him. But from what we, the audience, see through the eyes of those closest to him, Jonas is a complete bastard. Everything about him screams manipulation and self-interest. Contrast this with his nemesis, Force Majeure. We don't even get much of Force Majeure in the series, but what we get leads me to believe that Force Majeure was at least a decent person and a family man. I don't entirely know why they were mortal enemies, but I promise you Force Majeure was in the right. If you could chart the morality in the Venture Brothers world, Jonas would be a perfect 10 on the hero scale to the public, but secretly carry a -9 in bastardry. Force Majeure would likely be the opposite, maybe a -10 villain with a hidden +9 of decency and family values. Meanwhile, our characters blur the lines even more. Rusty Venture, he's probably sitting at a +1 or 2 with a -1 in hidden cruelty. The Monarch, a solid -2 villain on the surface with a secret +2 of being somehow a decent guy deep down. That contrast, heroes with dark sides and villains with redeeming qualities, is one of the show's strongest, most fascinating themes. Did any of that make more sense visually than it did writing for a script? I really hope so. What it basically comes down to is that in this world, good guys are often just as sadistic, cruel, and selfish as the villains. They're just allowed to be that way because of a government sanction. The Venture universe refuses to let morality exist as a black and white concept. Everything is complicated, flawed, and very human.
And there she is, Astro Base Go. As big as 3 junior high schools laid end to end. The once gleaming golden Goliath now sure could use a lady's touch. Thanks to parental intervention, the Astro Base is entirely free of frightened boys.
So we've unpacked some of the themes that make the Venture Brothers such a rich series, but that raises another question. What is it about the show that made it so endearing to its audience? Because let's face it, the fan base for the Venture Brothers is nothing short of passionate. Obviously, I cannot speak for every single fan of the Venture Brothers,
Action Johnny's hand isn't up.
but I can share what I think made it resonate with so many people. On paper, it sounds like it'd be a super niche concept, an animated series that pokes fun at older cartoons and their tropes by telling personal stories in an over-the-top, hyper-exaggerated world. But in practice, it is so much more than that. When it first started, the series leaned heavily on riffing on classics like Johnny Quest and Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Groove, just say something.
But as it grew, its cultural commentary expanded in scope, pulling from broader pop culture in ways that cast a hilariously wide net. Suddenly, you weren't just watching a parody, you were stepping into a universe filled with deeply relatable, endlessly flawed characters. A huge part of this comes down to the creators themselves. Doc Hammer and Jackson Public poured their hearts into this series.
Am I allowed to disagree?
No.
And if you've ever listened to their episode commentaries, you'll know they didn't just poke fun at the pop culture they grew up with, they celebrated it. They took everything they loved as kids and threw it into this absurd, beautifully chaotic sandbox they created. That earnestness is palpable, and it makes the humor hit harder, the drama feel more grounded, and the entire experience feel incredibly genuine. Even when the Venture Brothers is at its most ridiculous, you can tell it's coming from a place of love. Another thing that makes this series so endearing is how accessible the humor is. Without sacrificing depth. Even if you don't catch every single reference or deeper cut joke, it doesn't matter. The show is layered in a way where the primary comedy and the story still shine. Meanwhile, the more niche references often live in the background, waiting for the fans to notice on repeat viewings. That kind of balance, it's not easy to pull off, but the Venture Brothers nails it. In short, the Venture Brothers felt like it was made by fans for fans, but with enough heart and skill to appeal to just about anyone who gave it a chance.
Presently, the moon orbiting facility is rented monthly to artists, craftspeople, and whatever amateurs are. Most notable of these tenants, only Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, the reclusive masterminds behind your favorite TV program. Why don't you give them a friendly wave?
And that brings me to the next big question. How do you think the Venture Brothers influenced culture? Because even though it is so rooted in parody and borrowing from other ideas, it has undeniably left its mark.
No, sir, she plays hardball, and she pitches overhand.
The Venture Brothers sits in this fascinating space. On one hand, it's not obscure enough to be considered a pure cult classic, I think. I mean, it ran for 7 seasons and got a movie to cap it off after all. But on the other hand, it's still niche enough that not everybody has experienced it firsthand. That middle ground makes its cultural influence a little tricky to measure, I think. The irony is that the Venture Brothers is so deeply influenced by pop culture that its own influence probably flies under the radar. Take 24, for example.
And then my dad gets remarried, right? To my ex-girlfriend. It's almost incest.
It's almost a Greek myth.
If I try to mimic his voice, which I'm not about to do because I can't do a Seinfeld, it'd be as much a bad Seinfeld impression as it would be a bad Venture Brothers impression. The lines blur so seamlessly that some of the show's influence probably just goes unnoticed, especially in how creators incorporate and remix those same tropes today, just in a broader scale, unlike the MCU.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
Where you do see the show's fingerprints is online. The internet is full of creators who've been very vocal about their love for the Venture Brothers. And in spaces like these, where fans can explicitly name-drop their inspirations, the series' cultural impact becomes more apparent. Its unique tone, mixing biting satire, deep character work, and absurd humor. It's definitely shaped how modern creators approach storytelling, especially in animated or more niche series.
First name Mr., middle name Pid, last name T.
Beyond the internet, though, I think the Venture Brothers played a huge role in defining the identity of Adult Swim. It was one of the network's pillars, a show that kept people tuning in for years, and let's not forget, watching the Venture Brothers often became a gateway to even more niche Adult Swim series. For me, looking for new episodes introduced me to the bizarre worlds of shows like Xavier Renegade Angel.
Every cigarette takes 17 minutes off your life. Every slice of bacon takes 9 minutes off your life.
Can you dumb it down a notch?
If you smoke and eat bacon fast enough, you can go back in time. Ooh, you are a bad boy.
And I doubt I'm alone in that experience. For a series that never leaned too heavily on merchandising or mainstream marketing, its ability to hold that kind of attention says a lot. All that being said, measuring influence isn't an exact science as far as I am aware. If it is, let me know. But when a show can stay as relevant and beloved for as long as The Venture Brothers has, it's hard to argue that it hasn't shaped the culture around it, especially in the realm of adult animation.
At this time, I would like to ask you to return to your seats and extinguish any cigarettes as we are entering Astro Base Go. Feel free to light up once you're inside. All your favorite brands are available at the gift shop.
Speaking of which, that sounds like Legacy. Let's talk about Legacy, specifically how it impacts the characters. Legacy isn't just a theme in The Venture Brothers, it's practically the driving force behind so many of the characters' motivations. Take Rusty Venture again. So much of his life revolves around escaping the shadow of Jonas Venture Sr. Rusty doesn't even seem to care about actual innovation or adventure. His whole goal is to prove he's not the complete failure the world sees him as. It's this endless Sisyphean grind to live up to the legacy of his father and later his brother, Jonas Jr.
That seems like the sporting thing to do.
Who adds another layer to that impossible standard. And then there's Hank. Oh, Hank. Sweet summer child, who flips the whole legacy conversation on its head. While Rusty's stuck trying to live up to the past, Hank wants nothing to do with it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
He's constantly rejecting his metaphorical destiny, except when he literally becomes destiny. If you've seen the show, you know what I mean. Hank is such a brilliant character because he subverts expectations in a show that's already built on subverting expectations. Learn you're a clone? Most people would have a breakdown. But Hank, nah, he leans into it, because that's some Highlander shit right there. And then there's Jonas Venture Jr., JJ, who's maybe the most literal embodiment of legacy. He was born from Rusty, literally. As if the Venture legacy couldn't wait for Rusty to step up on his own. For most of his short life, Jonas Jr. is laser-focused on proving himself as the rightful heir to the Venture name. But when he finally achieves it, surpassing even Jonas Sr. in some ways, his body, and by extension the Venture legacy itself, betrays him. It's almost poetic. The moment he becomes the true Venture, he dies on the next iteration of the space station that killed Jonas Sr. You can't talk about the Venture Brothers without talking about legacy. It's everywhere, in the characters, the conflicts, even the broader story arcs. Whether they're fighting to uphold it, escape it, or redefine it, legacy is the force that pulls everyone forward or drags them down.
Emerging from the Lightspeed Hypervator, Jackson and Doc reached the Astrobase upper deck a full 3 minutes before they began.
Now, 3 minutes younger and magically speed-suited, the two visionaries begin their daily trek through the Astrobase.
7 miles of robot-choked corridors, 14 miles of confusing pipes and air ducts, and like 36 toilets comprise the winding wonder of a moon-orbiting studio.
And that leads us to the final question. What does the Venture Brothers mean to you? Honestly, the heart of this video, what the series was originally named for if you've been subscribed for that long. Everything we've talked about, legacy, themes, influence, it all circles back to why this show resonates so deeply on a personal level. There's something really special about the Venture Brothers. It's a show that casts an incredibly wide net, pulling in everything from comic book tropes to pop culture deep cuts. But it never loses sight or its story or its characters. To stick with the fishing metaphor, the series could have gone more commercial. It could have played it safe and leaned harder into what might have seemed more mainstream. But instead, it kept throwing back anything that didn't fit the creator's vision, ultimately airing only the prime cuts to the audience. And yes, the show wasn't perfect out the gate. The pilot and first season had their rough patches, but by season 2, it was firing on all cylinders. Better animation, sharper jokes, and a deeper understanding of its characters. Watching how the Venture Brothers grew over time makes me mourn for every great series that was cut short before it could really hit its stride.
Boys, we gotta put an end to this small-town talent show ourselves. It's already gone on well past the fat lady's encore.
It's a testament to what happens when creators are given the time to fully explore their vision. To put it into perspective on how I like the Venture Brothers and what it means to me, I didn't start rewatching the Venture Brothers with intent of making a video about it. I wasn't thinking about content or analysis. I was just having a really shit day. I saw the series pop up on Netflix, and yes please, within minutes I was completely sucked back into this world I love so much. I opted to shuffle my project schedule around just to talk about it. And because it's my birthday month, I figured what better gift to give myself than talking about a show that means so truly much to me. This is a series that makes me laugh out loud, but it makes me care deeply about these ridiculous, flawed characters. It's a show that juggles cloning and magic and absurdity with actual emotional stakes and consequences, and it somehow nails the balance every time. That is no small feat. And then there's the fandom. When I wear my Dr. Venture cosplay, the reactions are priceless. Half of the time people think I'm some kind of first responder and thank me for my service. It's really awkward, but also really sweet. The other half, it's pure enthusiasm. People shouting, "Go Team Venture!" Spanakopita, and "Ignore me!" at the top of their lungs, and I love it. Those moments remind me just how much the show means to its fans. In the end, the Venture Brothers isn't just a show to me, it's a comfort, a creative inspiration, and a community. It's a place I return to when I need a laugh or a reminder that even the most dysfunctional characters and people can have a place in the world, and honestly, that is something that's really special.
Based on the implausible designs of MC Escher, these confusing halls have claimed many victims.
Lost and tired visitors to the Astrobase give up their quest to meet the reclusive Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, and focus solely on survival and the ever-lessening likelihood of finding their way out.
Okay, before we wrap this up, there's one last thing I need to say, and that is thank you, seriously, for sticking with me through this whole thing. I am not entirely sure what season of the Venture Brothers I've stumbled into here in this bit, but it's clearly pre-season 6. So I think it's probably best I get out of here before Brock or someone shows up to take my head off. I'm gonna leave the upcoming episodes to play on the TV and just get the fuck out of here. Go out there and be the person the world thought Jonas Venture Sr. was. Be kind, be courageous, and strive to leave things better than when you found them. Oh, and one more thing. Go Team Venture.
Wait, is that Grover Cleveland's presidential time machine? Oh, that is exactly what I needed.
Upcoming episodes on Disney's Golden Age in March. Samurai Jack in April. Books, May. Superman coming in June. The MCU, Phase 2, coming in July.